Good.
Okay, we're waiting for our host.
I know. I was just looking about this 18 on 18 tonight. It's like Baoma thing.
It's a YouTube thing.
I know, because I'm not on Facebook.
No, I'm not on Facebook
You
either.
can get it on YouTube or on Facebook, all different places you can get it on.
Can
If
you?
you go onto their website, www.18for18.com.au, they'll tell you all the different places you can get it on.
Oh, okay. Because there's a lot of people not on Facebook.
Yeah, you can get it on YouTube.
Okay, good.
Good. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Start in just a minute.
Excellent. So goodness.
All right, good morning. Let's get going. I found out after last week's shiur that apparently I cut out a couple of times in the shiur. So if that happens today, please just send me a message, because then I'm really going to be talking to myself. But hopefully it won't happen today. But if it does, please be patient, and hopefully I will return quickly. And we're going to start off with Kli Yakar and Parshat Behar. We have two parshiot to learn about this week. And we're going to start off with a really famous question, a famous phrase at the beginning of the parsha, but then look at the Kli Yakar's take on this question. So, 1 second, let's get going. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Behar Sinai Lemor. Hashem said to Moshe on Har Sinai as follows. This week's parsha is called Behar, from that word. Daber el bnei Yisrael, speak to the Israelites, v'amarta alehem, and say unto them, Ki tavo el haaretz asher ani noten lachem, when you come to the land that I shall give you, v'shavta haaretz Shabbat el Hashem, the land should rest its Shabbat to Hashem. In the second part of today's shiur, we will look at the concept of Shemitah according to the Kli Yakar. But before then, the Kli Yakar reflects on the following famous Rashi. Rashi in source number 2 says, Ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai. What has Shemitah got to do with Har Sinai? Why? Our Parsha says, this is what Hashem told Moshe on Har Sinai. And then he tells us about Shemitah. And Rashi asks, Ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai. Why is, or how is Shemitah connected to Har Sinai? V'halo kol ha-mitzvot ne'emru mi-Sinai. Surely all the mitzvot were taught on Har Sinai. Why, Dafka, at the beginning of this week's Parsha, are we told that this interaction took place on Har Sinai? And this phrase, Ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai, has developed into being a general phrase, meaning, what's that got to do with anything? What's one thing got to do with the other? What's that got to do with the price of milk? Ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai. And Rashi goes on to answer, Ella, Ma Shemitah ne'emru chlaloteh upirtoheh v'dikdukeha miSinai. Just as when it comes to Shemitah, its general rules and its details and its minor details were all taught at Sinai. Af kulan ne'emru chlalotehen v'dikdukehen miSinai. For all the mitzvot, they were taught in general and in detail on Har Sinai. Kach shnuya b'torat kohanim. That is what is taught on the Midrash. And so Shemitah at the beginning of this week's Parsha, according to Rashi, is brought as an example that just as Shemitah was taught in general and in detail on Har Sinai, so everything else was taught in general and on detail on Har Sinai. We received absolutely everything on Har Sinai. The Kli Yakar develops this in source number 3 to provide his own thematic connection. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe b'Har Sinai lemor ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai. He starts off by quoting Rashi. And he goes on to say, Karov lishmoa. He says this is a plausible explanation. Kisha'ala Moshe al Har Sinai achar shiva shavuot. Moshe goes up to Har Sinai after 7 weeks. Shesafru Yisrael 49 yom in Pesach ad Atzeret, because the Israelites counted 49 days from Pesach until Shavuot. Then what happened? Moshe Rabbeinu goes onto this mountain. We reach the 50th day. Nitkadesh az oto har. Then that mountain itself, Har Sinai, the mountain upon which the revelation occurs, became sanctified. V'ne'esar b'zriya v'charisha b'yom chamishim. And so on that 50th day, of course, Har Sinai became prohibited to sow on it and to plow on it. You can't start planting things on Har Sinai or working Har Sinai. Har Sinai became holy land. Shebo nitna Torah, on the day on which the Torah was given. And so the Kli Yakar goes on to say, V'huzman mishichat hayovel. This is the same time frame, or at least the same time pattern, when it comes to reaching the Yovel year, the 50th year, the Jubilee year. So when it comes to the Torah, we have 7 weeks followed by day 50. When it comes to the Jubilee, we have 7 cycles of 7 Shemitah years followed by the Jubilee 50th year. It is a parallel pattern, just one is in days and weeks, the other is in years. And then you have the shofar blown in the Jubilee. And what happens in the Jubilee year? Likro dor v'chovshi l'chol Yisrael. The Yovel year is a year of dror, freedom and emancipation for everybody. Slaves would be released, land would be returned to the original owners. Yovel is all about freedom and liberty, which is the same thing as Torah, because Torah was cherut al haluchot, engraved on the luchot, but don't say charut, engraved, but cherut, freedom on the luchot. The two things are parallel. There's a parallel between the giving of the Torah on Shavuot and the Yovel year. Validei kol shofar shel matan Torah, and similarly, when the Torah was given, the shofar was blown, like the shofar of the Jubilee year. The Kli Yakar is providing all of these parallels, saying the connection between Shemitah and Har Sinai is an inherent connection. It's not just an example, but Shemitah is 7 times 7 plus 1 for the Yovel. Same thing for the giving of the Torah, 7 times 7 plus 1. You have the blowing of the shofar, and the focus is on freedom. And at the end of the process, you have land which becomes hallowed ground. Botoz man higid hakadosh baruch hu leMoshe. And so after going through these 7 weeks and receiving the Torah, Hashem said to Moshe, Inyan Shemitah ve'Yovel. He taught him about Shemitah and Yovel. Lomar, to let him know. Shebemispar Sheva of Mispar by invitation, and Inoten Kedusha Zo l'chol Eretz Yisrael. Hashem says to Moshe, you know we've just been through this process of 7 times 7 and 49. That will be the same process when you arrive in the land of Israel. Sheyesh la dimyon v'yichus im Har Sinai mitzad heyota avirad machkim. This is the punchline of the Kli Yakar. The land of Israel has a dimyon. It is similar, it is parallel v'yichus, and it relates to Har Sinai. Why? Because the land of Israel is avirah de machkim, the air of Israel, the atmosphere of Israel makes one wise. It is a place which imbues us with wisdom. And so, just as Har Sinai was a place on which we received wisdom, so too Israel is going to be what I call the new Har Sinai. It's going to replace Har Sinai. It's becoming our hallowed ground and our source of wisdom. Ve'ein Torah k'Torat Eretz Yisrael v'Har Sinai. You cannot compare Torah to the Torah which is given or received either in Israel or on Har Sinai. Al-Kain, therefore, in the final paragraph of source 3. Therefore, the land of Israel receives the sanctity of Har Sinai. We're not just talking about a series of parallels here. Israel is the new Har Sinai. After going through this process of 49 years, Israel reaches Kedushat Har Sinai in the Yovel year. Once again, going through cycles of 7. That's one explanation. Alternatively, or through our agricultural behavior in Israel, we are reminded of that great moment on Har Sinai. in addition to all the other reasons given for this mitzvah, that we have a year of freedom and blowing of the shofar, reminding us of the liberty given to us through the Torah and the blowing of the shofar. Al-Kei ne'emar v'Har Sinai. That's why it is said on Har Sinai. B'davar ze nachon v'karov lishmoa. This is correct and it makes sense. So the famous question is Rashi's question, Ma inyan shmita etzel Har Sinai. Rashi says it's an example. Just as the Torah was given, just as the laws of Shemitah were given in detail and in general on Har Sinai, so too everything was given in detail and in general on Har Sinai. And then the Kli Yakar explains, and it's not just a random example, but there's a thematic connection. We have cycles of 7, the 50th year, the time of freedom, and we have the land of Israel itself taking the place of the hallowed ground of Har Sinai. The next thing we're going to look at is the concept of Shemitah itself. And here the Kli Yakar is going to argue with some great people. He's going to start off by arguing with Rambam. He's then going to argue with the Akedah and others. And then he's going to give his own explanation, which is going to be pretty much the opposite of Rambam. Source number 4. We have this concept of Shemitah. V'shavta ha'aretz Shabbat laHashem. The land should rest. It's resting to Hashem. B'tam mitzvah zo yesh de'ot chalukot. There are different reasons given for the mitzvah of Shemitah. Ki rabim omrim, and many explain, she'atam hu she'tishbot ha'aretz. Why do we keep Shemitah? We keep Shemitah to give the land a break. Kedei shetosif tat kocha lizra, to increase its strength in order to bring up seed. This is the direction in which Rambam went. So Rambam inclined to say, why do we keep Shemitah? Because it's good for the ground. And sometimes you'll hear people make such claims and they'll say, scientifically it's been proven that Shemitah is good for the ground, or this process of 6 years of work and 1 year of lying fallow will strengthen the ground, it'll give you better fruit. It is part of the natural world. Rambam says Shemitah is there for natural reasons. And the Kli Yakar goes on and says, V'rabim cholkim alav. Many people argue against the Rambam. Why? V'amru, and they challenged him as follows. She'im chashasha haTorah lezeh, if the Torah was worried about natural agricultural advice, shelo techalesh adamah, that the land should have become weakened, then lama yirchayvu galut al shmitat haaretz. Why is our punishment for not keeping Shemitah exile from the land? If what we care about is the land, and that the land should have an opportunity to rest, why punish us by kicking us out of the land? We'll just have a natural punishment, and our punishment should be that the land won't give us its extra strength if we don't follow those rules. Furthermore, Shabbat laHashem. The Torah calls Shemitah Shabbat laHashem, a rest for Hashem. If all we're doing is general agricultural advice, why is that called Shabbat laHashem? Ki im letzorech haaretz, if it's just for the benefit of the land. And then similarly, Umasha Amar, when it says, and also we're going to read it this week, as tirtzeh haaretz shabtoteha, there'll be a certain revenge, and the land will then get its rest when we're kicked out of the land. Ma tarviach bazeh shigaleh mimenu Yisrael. What benefit is there to the land if we're exiled from the land? And then you have other nations in the land who'll never give it a Shemitah year. The land will be worked every single year. Why will the land be happy then? There's almost a suggestion that when we're kicked out of the land will be happier. Why would the land be happier if it's worked every single year? It doesn't make sense. How is it possible that the land is going to rest when we're kicked out, when it's placed in the hands of non-Jewish nations? So the Kli Yakar says, Rambam, I'm sorry, there are too many questions against you. You cannot say that the purpose of the Shemitah is your rational suggestion that it just makes sense with agriculture and science. It doesn't fit in with what it says in the Torah. He then argues with some other people. He picks another argument now, and he's going to argue with the Baal Akedah and Abarbanel. Top of page 2. Uva Akedah natan ta'amacher. There's a different reason given to this concept of Shemitah in the Akedah. Va'amar, and he said, שתכלית מצווה זו לזכר חידוש העולם. What is the point of Shemitah? Shemitah reminds us of the creation of the world. ולזכור ימות עולם וסוף ימי חלדו, to remind us about the individual process of somebody's life, and indeed they go through the process of a person's life from birth and the different stages of growing up and then passing away and what happens after that. And they describe the entire Shemitah Yovel cycle as being parallel to the story of one individual's existence in this world. V'chein katav Maria Barbanel, that's what the Barbanel said as well. So it's all to do with creation and cycles of 7 in terms of creation. Vosif od nofech mishalon, the Barbanel added his own detail and level there. But then the Kli Yakar says, V'gam ze rachok mikil yotai. This is very far from my kidneys, says the Kli Yakar, meaning this also doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that the whole point of Shemitah is to remind us that Hashem created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th. And so we also have this cycle of 7. Why? Ki yom ha-Shabbat hatmidi b'chol shavua. You've got Shabbos every week. Ba lezecher chidush ha'olam, comes to remind us about the fact that the world was created. V'im hu lo yo'il, if our weekly day to remind us that Hashem created the world isn't going to be enough to get that message into our heads, what's this thing which happens once every 50 years going to achieve? He says it doesn't make sense. The purpose of Shemitah is there to remind us about the creation of the world, because that is overkill. He says, we've already got Shabbat. If Shabbat doesn't work, it's once a week, you don't stand a chance. Don't think Shemitah is going to help you. So Rambam says, Shemitah is there for natural reasons, for the strength of the land. He says that doesn't make sense for numerous reasons. The Akedah and Abarbanel say that Shemitah is there to represent the creation of the world and the story of man as the individual person. They say that doesn't make sense either. So what is the purpose of Shemitah? Kli Yakar comes along and explains. In order to make everything make sense, Omer ani, I'm going to say as follows. Shetam mitzvah zohi, the reason for Shemitah is lahashrish et Yisrael b'midat ha'emunah v'habitachon b'Hashem, to entrench within us the qualities of faith and trust in Hashem. Shemitah naturally makes us believe more in Hashem. How? Ki chashash HaKadosh Baruch Hu, first of all, in the context Hashem was concerned. Pen bevo'am el ha'aretz, what's going to happen? We're living, in miracle land, this wonderful dreamland of miracles in the wilderness. We've been brought out of Mitzrayim. We're miraculously sustained by Hashem. We don't get our water from the sky and our bread from the ground. We get our water from the ground in Miriam's well, and our bread falls from the sky. But then we're going to enter Eretz Yisrael. What's going to happen? Yitasku ba'avodat ha'adama ala minhag ha'tivi. There was a concern that we're then going to follow the natural way of working the land. That's a stylistic quotation. When we become super powerful, we're going to forget Hashem. We will stop placing our faith and trust in Hashem. We're going to pat ourselves on the back and say, aren't we amazing? Aren't we brilliant? We are agricultural geniuses. We're such technological and scientific and economically amazing people. Aren't we just the best? That's the danger of going into the land and thinking that everything happens naturally. The olam kamin hagon oheg, and will say, hey, this is just the way the world works. And will think that we are the owners of the land. We are the owners, and no others. That's a great danger, and I think we can identify with that danger. Al-Kain, therefore, the aim of Shemitah is to completely remove us from natural cycles. Rambam said the aim of Shemitah is to help us along natural cycles. He's saying it's the absolute opposite. It's to remove us from the natural. What's the normal process over 6 years? The general crop cycle would be 2 years of sowing, and 1 year let it lie fallow. That's the normal 6-year cycle. Work it for 2 years, let it rest. Work it for 2 years, let it rest. You certainly wouldn't work the land for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years or 6 years. You'd give it a rest by then. Because you don't want to make the ground weary. What does Hashem come along and say? Sheish shanim tizra sadecha, plant the land for 6 years. Keep going. Midei shana b'shana, year after year, v'ani mavtichecha, not only will you succeed, but I promise you, losif kocha shelo tachish, that is going to add strength. V'od nes b'toch nes. Then we have a further miracle. Within this miracle, we're going to have 3 layers of miracle. This is layer 2. After planting and working the field for 6 years, if in the 6th year it doesn't become weak, and the normal circumstances, if you work a field for 6 years, if it doesn't become weak after 6 years, it's certainly not going to become stronger in the 6th year. Hashem says, Adarabba, au contraire. Not only are you going to squeeze everything you can out of this field for 6 years, but in the 6th year, yosif lakoach. It's going to get even greater strength. To the extent that it says, Hashem's blessing will be on the land for the 6th year, that is going to make enough produce to last you for year 6, year 7, where you're not working the land, and year 8, which is the first year of the new cycle, where you're still picking things up again. That's not natural, says the Kli Yakar. It's miraculous. And if it's not miraculous enough, that in 1 year, which is year 6, where you've already worked the ground without a break, it's going to produce for 3 years. Aval v'shalishim al kulo, he's just being poetic there. The third and most impressive miracle is as follows. What happens if in the 6th year you only produce enough food for 1 year? Don't worry. Mikal makom, nevertheless, yishlach Hashem et habracha ba'osmehem. Hashem will send his bracha in their osmehem. The word osem comes from here. Osem is like a storage place for grain or food. Hashem will bestow his blessing upon our food. It's a bit like a Chanukah miracle. Shiochal kima, you'll eat just a little bit, umavarech b'me'av, and your stomach will be blessed. Tasbik hatvua l'shalosh shanim, a little bit of produce will last for 3 years. V'yosef Hashem koach ba'aretz ad she'otah hatvua tasbik l'shalosh shanim. Hashem will add blessing to the land so that that small amount of produce will last for 3 years. V'zeh vadai gam. That is an open miracle and the greatest one of all. And therefore, what is the point of all of this? The Kli Yakar comes along and says, through all of these wonders that I'm putting in your hand, the result will be is that you will know, you will know that the land belongs to Hashem. Through following the Shemitah process, by going against nature and following this miraculous cycle, then our eyes will just be lifted looking to Hashem. Just like in the Midbar, we would raise our eyes to Hashem for our daily manna to fall, we'd raise our eyes to Hashem for the miraculous results of the Shemitah year. Because that gives us a constant connection to Hashem and that constant bitachon, trust in Hashem. Kach inyan hashmita. That's the point of Shemitah. Shelo yavdu adama kol shana shvi'it. An entire year you don't work the land. Ein zarea ve'ein katzir. No one is planting. No one is harvesting. V'yismechu al hanes. Shemitah is about relying on the miracle. And he goes on and says, with a touch of confidence, which we'll let him have, or I will. V'zeh ta'am nachon. That is a correct answer. Ubarur yoter, and it's clearer. Mikol ma shedibru vo hamafarshim. It's a better answer than what all the mafarshim have given you. So the Kli Yakar is rather confident that this is the best answer, which is good for us to know. This morning we've learned the best answer. And the best explanation for Shemitah is that it's all about relying on miracles. If you see a newspaper article which says scientists prove that Shemitah is good for the land, that's not good news. That goes against the point of Shemitah. Shemitah is davka, the fact that it doesn't make sense according to science, that it only makes sense according to Hashem. We're not going to go into this now, but this is part of a broader debate, which we saw when we studied Ramban, and we've raised at different stages as opposed to the role of miracles in our lives. According to Rambam Maimonides, the fewer miracles, the better. Because every time there's a miracle, it means that there was something wrong with the natural order of the world, which means that Hashem's world is imperfect, and therefore you need a miracle in order to correct something missing in his world. So Rambam Maimonides does not like miracles. Ramban Nachmanides believes absolutely everything is a miracle. Either way, the Kli Yakar says the point of Shemitah is to make us realize that everything we do relies upon Hashem, which is a concern that we have to be aware of when we enter the land. We can now understand, and this is just going to complete what we're looking at in our first Parsha this week, we can now understand why the land takes it so personally when we don't keep the laws of Shemitah. The land's not a person, but you know what I mean. Ulefi zeh, based on this, Dinhu, it just makes sense. Shitchayvu galut ba'avon hashmitah. What is the appropriate punishment for not keeping Shemitah? The appropriate punishment is being kicked out of the land. Why? Mitzad chesron ha'emunah shebahem, because of our lack of emunah. Ki lo ha'eminu b'Hashem, because we lacked emunah in Hashem. V'lo bitchu b'shuato, and we didn't rely and place our faith in Hashem's salvation. She'aseh lehem nes kazeh, to follow this miraculous cycle, b'asiyat tetvah l'shalosh shanim, and therefore we went back to a different process. We didn't rely that in the 6th year Hashem will give us 3 years worth of produce. Gama aretz atzma takpid al zeh ma'od, the land itself will take this very personally. Ki ritzona shitgalgel zchut al yada lechazek emunah b'Hashem al yada. Eretz Yisrael is really excited. Through the land of Israel, Hashem's appearance in this world is increased. And through the land of Israel, our emunah in Hashem is increased. The land of Israel is really excited to play this role. And when we ignore the land and we deny the land its opportunity to create a Kiddush Hashem in this world, the land takes it personally. Va'od, furthermore, she'al yedei zeh ya'aminu ki kulam einan rak arisim b'karka. Furthermore, the aim of Shemitah is for us to realize that we are only sharecroppers. We don't really own the land. We've got to deal with Hashem. We are temporary people who have a great privilege to work the land. However, Vakadosh Baruch Hu Baal Hasadeh, Hashem is the owner of the land. That's what the land wants. The land doesn't want to belong to us. The land doesn't want to belong to big Israeli corporations. The land wants to belong to Hashem. Because the land belongs to Hashem. And then what happens is, when we annul this process and we don't engage with the Shmitot, when we behave as if the land really belongs to us, Ra'ui hu shetakpid ha'aretz, it makes sense that the land will be particular about this. That is when we are on the land, and therefore it makes sense that we'll get kicked out of the land if we don't keep Shemitah. Now, how does it help the land if we're not on the land? It goes as follows. Aval ha'akum, when there are non-Jews in the land, lo takpid, the land doesn't care so much. If non-Jews, when they're in control of the land, just follow natural cycles when they work the land, because that's just the way they live according to nature. And they do not have the same emunah that we have. So he says, if non-Jews are on the land isn't angry, the land isn't upset, because that's just what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to follow the laws of nature. We are expected to live our lives on a different level, and we're expected through our connection to the land to bring about an awareness of the fact that everything in this world belongs to Hashem. When we fail in that mission, we should get kicked out of the land. When other people are in the land, They don't have the same expectations, and therefore the land isn't so upset about that. And he goes on to say, with a little bit of confidence, after this suggestion, he's going to go on to explain the psukim. He says the psukim in Parshat Bahar makes sense with this explanation, and this explanation is ha'ametit asher ein safek ba. This is the true explanation of Shemitah, and there is no doubt that I am correct. So he's incredibly confident in this explanation, and this is the introduction to his explanation of the actual psukim in this week's Parsha, which we are not going to look at today, because we are now moving to this week's second Parsha of Bechukotai. Nevertheless, to summarize what we've seen in the Kli Yakar on Bahar, according to Rambam, Shemitah is all about the natural and rational benefits to the ground. According to the Akeda and Abarbanel, it's about the story of man in this world and the story of creation. According to Kli Yakar, Shemitah is all about miracles, about how Am Yisrael, in our presence in the land, can bring about an awareness of Hashem in this world. And if we don't do that, we deserve to be kicked out of the land. And that connects with what we said at the beginning of the Kli Yakar on Parshat Bahar, which is Eretz Yisrael is a holy land because it has taken on the Kedusha of Har Sinai. It is the new Har Sinai, the new hallowed territory, which is the source of wisdom in this world. Now let's move on to Kli Yakar on Parshat Bechukotai. We'll start with a short, sweet thing, and then we'll look at his major contribution to Parshat Bechukotai. Just at the beginning of Parshat Bechukotai, we have some blessings. Followed by that, we have loads of curses. And we're just going to look at just one of the blessings and what it means. And then we're going to look at a fundamental question on Parshat Bechukotai. Towards the beginning of Parshat Bechukotai, we are told, V'radfu mikem chamisha me'ah. This is a fairly classic question. He's going to give a slightly different answer. 5 of you, it says, are going to chase away 100. 100 of you, Revava Yerdofu, will chase away 10,000. And your enemies will fall before you by the sword. And some people say, wait a second, we have a slight mathematical challenge here. If 5 of you chase away 100, that means each of you are going to chase away 20 enemies. If 100 of you will chase away 10,000, that means each of you are going to chase away 100 enemies. The maths don't add up. Unless you look at a certain exponential, we all know what that means nowadays, a certain exponential growth in impact. Nevertheless, the Kli Yakar explains as follows in source number 6. The seeming lack of mathematical accuracy or process in this pasuk can be explained as follows. Amru HaMefarshim, the Mefarshim explain, Shemitchila, at the beginning of the process, Kodem shikanes moracha bilvavam, before they're scared of you, you know, just when you're being introduced, then Yerdafu chamisha me'ah, 5 of you will be able to chase away 100 of them. So you'll start off being able to each chase away 20 people. That's before people have heard of you. But then after that happens, everyone's going to hear about you. You're going to be in all the newspapers. Your reputation will spread throughout the land. After that happens, when they say, wow, 5 of you can chase away 100, then your great fear will enter the hearts of the enemies, and they're going to be so weakened, then 100 of you will be able to chase away 10,000. And then even more than that, we reach stage 3, which is they're just going to be killing each other. Even if you don't chase them. So we've got 3 stages looking back at Pasuk 5. Stage number 1, 5 of you will be able to chase away 100. Then your reputation will grow. Stage number 2, 100 of you can chase away 10,000. Stage number 3, they're just going to end up killing each other. You can just sit back and watch as they engage in whatever civil challenges they have, which is they're not even going to come close to you. They're not even going to mess with you. It'll all be done without you even chasing them. That is something short and sweet. If you find mass death sweet. Either way, source number 7. Now the Kli Yakar is going to focus on the fundamental question at the beginning of Parshat Bechukotai. And the question is as follows. Why is Olam Haba not mentioned explicitly in Parshat Bechukotai, and is part of a broader question, which is, why is Olam Haba not mentioned explicitly in the Torah? If I was to come along and ask you as follows, please tell me, what is the reward for somebody who lives a life of Torah and mitzvot? And I was to open this for discussion, I'm assuming the answers would include Olam Haba, the times of Mashiach, Tchiat HaMeitim, all of these spiritual rewards. Nevertheless, when we open up this week's second parasha of Bechukotai, and we ask ourselves, what are the rewards for following Hashem's laws? It says, in Bechukotai teilechu, if you follow my statutes, uva mitzvotai tishmoru, and keep my mitzvot, va'asitem otam, and you perform them, then what's going to happen? We're told you're going to get food, you're going to get rain, you're going to get military success, you're going to be safe from wild animals, and you're going to have a relationship with Hashem. And Hashem then goes on and he says, V'hitalachti b'tochachem, source number 7, I will walk amongst you. Vayiti lachem lelokim, I will be your God. Vatem tiyu li la'am, you will be my people. Now, what does it mean when Hashem says, I will walk amongst you, I'll be your God, you'll be my people? Rashi explains it, as is quoted by the Kli Yakar in source number 8. V'hitalachti b'tochachem, Pirush Rashi, etayelet imachem began Eden. Rashi says, look, this is a reference to Gan Eden. When Hashem says, I will walk amongst you, it means you're going to get Gan Eden. Now, the Kli Yakar analyzes why Rashi feels the need to talk about Gan Eden at the beginning of Parshat Bechukotai. And he says as follows, Da'ato, his aim here is l'salek me'al Toratenu hakdosha kol to'en umarer ha'omer. He is trying to protect our Torah and to remove from our holy Torah anyone who will come along and claim and say, because the Torah nowhere mentions any reward for our soul. Im kain, then, vaday, en koach b'mitzvot elu lanchilosehem aschar nafshi l'olam haba. Performing mitzvot aren't going to give you any reward for your soul in the world to come. Somebody will come along and say, prove to me that you're going to get a reward in the world to come for keeping a life of Torah and mitzvot. Where does it say that in the Torah? And the people will say, "V'tachlit asiyatam eino kim lekabel haschar ba'olam hazeh." It's all about this world, and it's all about reward in this world, the rain and the food and the financial success and the military success and being fruitful and multiplying and everything else listed at the beginning of this week's parsha. And therefore, Rashi, he says, needed to explain that Gan Eden appears in our list of rewards so that nobody could say it's all about this world. Many amazing and great people have grappled with this question. Why is Olam Haba not mentioned explicitly in the Torah? Why are the rewards given such a physical focus? There are 7 approaches to this question. The Abarbanel describes the 7 at length, but I'm performing a public service. I am now going to give you the brief version to the 7 answers to this question. So in the following 23 minutes, we are going to look at the 7 approaches to the question, why are the rewards promised to us in the Torah so physical in their nature? Why is the physical focus on Olam Hazeh? And why is there not much focus, certainly no explicit focus, on Olam Haba? 22 minutes, let's go. Approach number 1 is the Rambam. Hadaya ha'achat hidat ha'Rambam. Approach number 1 is the Rambam. Shekol elu ha'yi'udim einan ikar haschar. All these things listed in this week's second Parsha that we'll be rewarded with if we keep Hashem's mitzvot are not the actual reward. All the good things and the bad things, the entire process of the brachot and the curses in Parshat B'chukotai Zeh, what are they talking about? It's only about removing the obstacles. And he explains, which means, if you keep my mitzvot, I'm going to remove from you all these different obstacles like war and illness and what else did he put here? And hunger and anguish. But you're just going to be free to serve Hashem without anything getting in the way. However, the actual reward of Olam Haba is not mentioned. Why? So that we should serve Hashem lishma, not for the benefit of that reward. Or for the fear of punishment. Look at Rambam, and Rambam also mentions it in Moreh Nevuchim. Rambam says two things. Number one is, when the Torah says, if you keep my mitzvot, I'll give you food, I'll give you drink, I'll give you rain, I'll give you military success, financial success, you'll be fruitful and multiply, that's not the reward. What it's saying is, if you keep my Torah and mitzvot, you won't have to worry about what you're going to eat or what you're going to drink or security concerns or financial concerns or familial concerns. You won't have to worry about any of that. Your diary will be open and free just to connect and love Hashem. Furthermore, we're not told to keep the mitzvot in order for the reward of Olam Haba because we shouldn't be motivated by Olam Haba. Everything should be lishma. This approach, Bli Neder, I'm going to focus on our Thursday night Parsha Shiur, together with a different approach, which is not one of the 7 mentioned here. But let's move on to approach number 2. Hadaya Hashniya Hidat HaIbn Ezra. Approach number 2 is the Ibn Ezra. The Parshat Ha'azinu in Ha'azinu V'zel Shana, who says as follows, Ulefi da'ati, in my opinion, we have to understand that Torah is not a book which was given to an elitist few. Torah is a book for kol. It's applicable to everybody. Who is able to truly understand the concept of Olam Haba? How many people out of every 1,000 can understand that? Because it's so deep. Ad kana shanot, close speech marks. And therefore, v'da'ato, approach number 2. Why is Olam Haba not promised to us as a reward in the Torah? It is because because it is difficult for us to identify with it and imagine it as a reward. That which is physical isn't able to perceive that which is so spiritual. There's a certain disconnect. Because of the lack of the ability of the populace to deal with such lofty spiritual concepts, the Torah speaks to us on our level. Keep Torah, I'll give you food, I'll give you drink, military success. Those physical things we can identify with, it doesn't speak to us on a spiritual level because very few people are truly able to identify with that level. Approach number 3 is the approach of Rabbeinu Bachya, which also appears in the Ibn Ezra and our old friend, the Ramban. Hadaya Hashlishit hi de'ar Rabbeinu Bachya Hazaken. Sometimes he's called Rabbeinu Bachya Hazaken. Zichra Rabbeinu Ibn Ezra Parshat Hazinu v'nata l'dvarav gam Ramban nata l'de'a zo v'hu, which is as follows. Shekol ha'yehudim shebatorah heim lemala min ha'teva. This is beautiful, and it's very Ramban, and it's the opposite of the approach we saw before. Everything in the Torah is supernatural. Don't tell me that the food and the drink and the military success is all natural. That's all supernatural. You think it's natural that there's a correlation between us performing the mitzvot and the timing of the rain? And the rain stops when we don't follow Hashem? You call that nature? However, The fact that the soul will return to the place from where it was hewn. Zedavar TV, that's nature. Elan Shama, that's the natural process of the neshama. That's not nature. This is beautiful. This is the opposite of what we said before. Previously, we said we have all these natural rewards of food and drink and military, etc., and this supernatural, lofty concept of the soul. He's saying the opposite. Of course, the soul will go back to where it came from. That's nature. But that the nature in this world will reflect our behavior, that is supernatural. And the fact that the Torah has a punishment called karet, el hanefesh, hachotat, for the sinful soul, which means from the fact that we have a concept of karet, which is a punishment whereby the soul is cut off, excommunicated from its source. What does that mean? If the soul doesn't sin, it'll go back home, where it belonged all along, and therefore our soul returning to Olam Haba is natural. This world is supernatural. That is approach number 3. So don't ask why there are all these natural rewards in this week's Parsha. That's all supernatural. And where is Olam Haba in the Torah? It appears in the Torah with a concept called karet. Karet means if you do the wrong thing, you won't have that natural connection called Olam Haba. From the fact we have a concept from karet, it means that the opposite is the natural order, which is that the soul goes back to where it came from. 4 approaches to go. Approach number 4. This is Rabbeinu Nissim and the Kuzari, and they'll get a little mention later on as well. Hadayah HaRevi'it, approach number 4, he is as follows. In those days, the context in which Parashat Bechukotai took place is a context in which the entire world denies the existence, or at very least the hashgacha, the supervision of Hashem in this world. And they were claiming, whatever takes place in the world is just what must happen. It's not out of Hashem's personal desire. Therefore, what does Hashem need to do? Hashem needed to provide these Yehudim, these rewards, in order to strengthen the concept of divine providence in this world. And then those very eyes will see that whoever does the will of Hashem will be positively overseen and influenced by Hashem. So what's the aim of Parshat Bechukotai? Say the Rabbeinu Nissim and the Kuzari, the aim of Bechukotai is to introduce into the world a system whereby Hashem's divine providence can be seen and therefore proven. If Hashem would have said, if you keep my Torah and mitzvot, then you'll get reward in the world to come, that wouldn't resolve the problem. Why? Because the one who wants to lie, he'll just take things further, and he doesn't need this because he'll say whatever. You tell me there's a world to come, I don't believe in that. Show me in this world that Hashem exists. That's Rabbeinu Nissim based on the Kuzari. Therefore, approach number 4. Why isn't Olam Haba mentioned explicitly in the Torah? Because the Torah wanted to give us a proof which we could view in this world for divine providence. Olam Haba wouldn't serve that purpose, although it's true, because Olam Haba isn't going to prove to us in this world that Hashem has an influence on our lives in this world. That's why it's not mentioned. It just doesn't meet the purpose of what the Torah is doing here. Approach number 5 is from Rav Sadia Gaon, which also appears in the Rambam. Hadayah HaChamishit here. Approach number 5 is as follows. Shekodem Kabbalat Torah. Once again, now we are looking at the context in which this was taught. Prior to receiving the Torah, Hayuvdin Kochavim Umazalot. We were idol worshippers. Vayosim Lehem Avodot Myuchadot. K'dei Lamshich Mehem Habracha. And what would we do? The form of spiritual worship prior to Matan Torah was one whereby people would do different things in order to serve these different powers and forces and idols in order to draw blessing from them. But for what? If you wanted to have a strong agricultural year, you would serve at a certain avodah zarah in a certain way. And if you wanted rain, or lavik shamim be'itam, you would do a certain thing to the rain god. V'shar hatzlachot haguf, and all other physical things, they would serve different gods in different ways in order to draw physical blessing in this world. Therefore, when Hashem gave us the Torah and he says, that's it, no more davening for rain, no more davening for produce, no more davening to any of these small things. You can't do that anymore. Hashem needed to somehow fill that void. He needed to promise them that don't worry, if you keep Torah, then you're going to get your rain and your produce and your military success, and you won't be attacked by wild animals, and you'll be fruitful and multiply and everything else. And don't worry about everything you're lacking by the fact that you're no longer serving your avodah zarah. Aval, however, Chayei ha'olam haba, when it came to the olam haba, lo hutzrach li adem, that wasn't required in this context. Ki gam al yedei otan avodot la hayu muftachin bo. They never served any avodah zarah in order to get olam haba. And therefore there was no such void which needed to be filled in at this moment in time to replace their previous idea. I'm thinking of a noun for serving idols. Don't know why it's escaped my head. Anyway, their previous service of idols, that has nothing to do with Olam Haba, therefore there was no vacuum to be filled. And he says, V'zeh dat Rav Sadia, that is the view of Rav Sadia Gaon b'Sefer Emunot Shelo in his book of Emunot. V'gam b'Sefer Moreh Nevuchim Chelek Shlishi, this also appears in Rambam. What's beautiful in the different approaches we have here is just the broad range of approaches. From the super Ramban miraculous approach that nature is supernatural and the supernatural is natural on the one extreme, and on the other extreme we've got here Rambam and others saying the Torah was given within a certain context and certain things were done in order to remove people away from idolatry. Some people suggested paganism, which is a nice word. It's not the word I was looking for. It was idolatry. Anyway, what's beautiful is the Kli Yakar comes along here and he gives this overview of these very different approaches, like Abarbanel did, but he does it in a very, very accessible way. Approach number 6, the penultimate approach we will look at today. Hadaya hashishit here. Approach number 6 is because we're told in the promises in this week's Parsha that Hashem will walk amongst us and he will place his Mishkan amongst us, which is the cleaving of the divine presence to Israel. Even in this world, that the soul is all mixed up with physicality. If in this world we can connect to Hashem and we can have an encounter with the divine in this world, when the soul separates from the physicality of this world, it will be able to cleave to Hashem. You see, all those fake religions, datot mezuyafot, fake beliefs, promise certain things about the world to come. In our religion, you get them even in this world. Which is proven by the prophecy which exists amongst us. It also appears in the Kuzari, Besof Mamar Aleph Mesifro, V'chzik b'dei Azor Rabbeinu Nissim, Bedrash HaChadash also appears in Rabbeinu Nissim. In other words, what he's saying is as follows. He's saying that, where is Olam Hazeh in the Torah? Sorry, where is Olam Haba in the Torah? If Olam Haba is an encounter between the soul and the divine, then that already appears in Olam Hazeh in the Torah. And if in Olam Hazeh in the Torah, Hashem will place his Mishkan amongst us and walk amongst us in Olam Hazeh, then Kal Vachomer, that will continue in Olam Haba. The final approach before his summary. Hadeya Hashvi'it, approach number 7 is E. Shekol HaYehudim HaNizkarim b'Torah Heim L'Chlalut HaUmah. Everything which is promised in the Torah is for the nation as a whole. Ki ha'olam nidon achar rubo, because the world is judged based on majorities. V'ye'ud hagshamim v'hatvuah v'hashalom v'chayotze behem. All the things which are mentioned in this week's Parsha, rain, produce, peace, and the like, Yelechol Yisrael ke'echad, we're dealing with national brachot. It doesn't rain on one individual more than another individual. Rain is a national consideration. And same thing to do with peace, and same thing to do with produce. It's talking about our national blessings. The reward of the soul for the world to come, that's not a national consideration. Each individual is judged as an individual in the world to come. The concept of the world to come is hinted at with the mitzvot of honoring your parents and sending away the mother bird. This appears in the Sefer Ikarim and Nachmanides, Parshat Ekev, on the pasuk B'chol Levavchem Ayin Sham. What's he saying? Why is Olam Haba not listed in the list of rewards at the beginning of Parshat Bechukotai? Because Olam Haba is a very individual reward. Each individual is judged as an individual. Parshat Bechukotai, we are being addressed as a nation. If as a nation we keep Torah, then we'll have rain and food and security. If as a nation we don't, we'll suffer the horrific consequences in this week's Parsha. Olam Haba is not mentioned because Olam Haba is not a national reward. It is an individual reward, and therefore it doesn't make sense in this week's Parsha. And he goes on to summarize and say as follows. B'shiva drachim elu. With these 7 approaches, Yanusu hadavrot atak al Toratenu hakdosha, those who make false claims against our Torah can just run away now. And he goes on to say something else, and he brings another argument of his own. Milvad, not including mashara'inu be'einenu, another argument for the existence of Olam Haba. Let's pay attention. Kama gadlachi bat Hashem al avotenu. Do you know how much Hashem loved our avot, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? Just consider the love that he had for them and the special relationship which they enjoyed. If their reward in this world was the end of their reward, if that's all they were going to get, what did Avraham get? What advantage did he have over the evil Nimrod? This one ruled over the kippah, meaning over the world. What was Avraham's life? He was moving around, wandering his entire life. Going from tent to tent, going from nation to nation. He says, think about it. Hashem loved Avraham. If Avraham's reward would stop in this world, it means that Avraham's reward wasn't as great as Nimrod's reward. V'chein Yitzchak v'Yaakov, think about Yitzchak and Yaakov. Lo yadanu ma haya lahem min haschar ha'amiti. We don't know what their true reward was. Ki im zeh haschar hamiyuad lezar'am, hu sof zichram, ma kisharon leba'alav. If it's only that which is promised to their children after them, or what do you personally gain from this? Ki achrei motam yinchalu zaram et ha'aretz. Okay, their children get the land. But if your personal relationship and life and reward ends when you leave this world, well, you're gone. It doesn't make a difference to you. And then Yitzchak and Yaakov leave this world empty-handed. And even those in the future generations, those who enter the land. Even if you're in the land, and even if you have peace, can you truly say that that's your reward from Hashem? Is your life that much better? From all those kings which were successful and ruled in the world like them, and some of them even more successful. He says it must be Sherav tov hatzafon latzadikim hu chalkam v'nachlatam shel ha'avot. The true reward awaiting our tzadikim is the portion and inheritance which also awaited our avot. V'shel kol toldoteim kayotze behem, and all of their generations which follow them. Ki Torah achat lekulam. The same rule applies to all of us. What's he saying? Having given 7 explanations as to why Olam Haba is not mentioned in this world, really what he's trying to do is to prove Olam Haba. And he brings 7 approaches to prove the concept of Olam Haba. He comes along and says there's another proof for Olam Haba. What's that? He says Olam Hazeh proves Olam Haba, because Olam Hazeh is not fair. And the fact that Olam Hazeh is not fair means that there must be an Olam Haba. It cannot be that Avraham, who was so beloved to Hashem, it cannot be that what he received in Olam Hazeh was his full reward. It doesn't make sense. And the same thing with Yitzchak Yaakov. And he says there cannot possibly be a situation whereby our entire reward comes in this world, because that this world is not fair. And I think this message can be a real source of nechama for individuals. When we see incredibly righteous people suffer and it just doesn't make sense, that itself can be a proof for Olam Haba. It cannot be that that's the way it is, and it cannot be that it ends here, and it cannot be that this tzaddik suffers in this way and that's the end of that. There must be an Olam Haba. Sometimes looking at Olam Hazeh for the way it is proves that there must be an Olam Haba. So we have had today 8 approaches to Olam Haba summarized to us by the Kli Yakar. You're welcome to join me on Thursday night when we will focus on just 2 approaches, one which we mentioned explicitly today, one which was hinted at today, and we're just going to take it in a different direction to the one we took today. I wish you all a great week ahead.
Shavua tov. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shavua.
So much.
Shavua tov.
Inspiration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Excellent. Thank you.
Rabbi Mervis, is it possible to have the text? Can you send it to us?
I sent it to Naomi yesterday, so she should be able to send it to you.
Naomi
Naomi Bloch, yeah.
Oh, Naomi Bloch. Oh, okay. So
whoever wants to receive the sources in advance each week, Naomi Bloch emails them out.
Naomi Bloch. Oh, thank you.
When they're ready. All right, be well.
All right, thank you.
All right, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Stay
Good
safe,
talk,
everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.